So now moving forward for episode 3 of the RNS Series, we're going to talk about the slide concept. Unfortunately, I could not find a Miles Davis play diagram for this exact variation that we're going to talk about out of trips, but I've thrown up a 2x2 version of it on the screen. So Miles Davis likes to call this streak, so 90 streak, and this is the one play where there's a bunch of different option routes on the field. So we're going to see against cover three. This is what it looks like. We get 4 different vertical routes, and then against cover two, we can either get a post or a kind of shallow or deeper dig route versus blitz and 2 man. It kind of gets a little bit different on Madden, but that is overall the concept from Mouse Davis's playbook. So now jumping over to the actual game, we see it's a little bit different. For one, we are in a 3x1 set like we've been in the past 2 videos. So it's going to be a little bit different on that back side. But as you can see, he runs a very similar route to the 2 receivers on the front side. So jumping into the play, we're going to start off versus cover three. So as you can see versus cover three, it's pretty straightforward. Garrett Wilson will run that kind of pseudo seam route. It's kind of more like a slot fade. So you'll see as soon as he clears that hook defender, we want to bullet pass and pass lead that down. And then on the outside, we see Lazard run that fade route. Another thing you might see is your opponent starts a hard flat. So when they hard flat, you're going to see against cover three, we get a curl route always. So he runs that cover three, or he runs that curl route no matter if it's cover three with a hard flat or stock cover three. So it's a pretty simple concept on the right. They're going to have to Mabel to cover that alone. And then, of course, if they're dropping back a little bit deeper, you can kind of still hit this bubble. I put him on a cloud flight, and as you see, Xavier Gibson on the outside ran a kind of a noun route. This is probably the worst play you could possibly call against cover one. So if your opponent's running a lot of cover one, I would try to stay away from this because you don't really have that many answers. Kind of all you have is that outside fade route that I've showed you guys. So that right there. It looks a little crazy, but it is super duper consistent. Elsewhere on the field, you see what we get. We get Garrett running that slot fade because it's one high. And then we get a fade on the outside as well. So that is pretty much all you can really do against cover one. If you kind of know they're coming out on cover one, of course you can zig or drag or do anything of that nature in the coverage to beat the coverage. But I generally like to hit that guy, that Lazard, on that outside fade route. Versus cover 2 man / 2 man under, you're going to see that this is actually a pretty solid play call. We're going to watch Garrett Wilson right here in the slot right here. He runs that slant route that pretty much beats man coverage every single time. I feel like this isn't necessarily the best play against cover 2 man stock at least, and that's really just because Garrett is the only man beating route on the field. Of course, you can zig on the outside, kind of get that going, but that is the main concept versus cover 2 man. Jumping over to Tampa 2, we're going to see that this is a Tampa 2 killer. So we have Cobb in the slot on that right side. He's going to pull that corner down to the flat, and then we're going to have Gibson on the outside. You can pretty much always make that throw in there because Garrett Wilson is running that post that puts that deep half safety on the right at conflict. Pretty straightforward. We're going to pretty much always get this. That is my preferred read out of this or against cover 2. On the backside, though, you're going to see Lazard runs as a hitch, which I don't recommend throwing. But overall, that is Tampa 2. Moving over to max quarters. This is not a great play versus quarters, but I threw it in here because it's a part of the run and shoot offense. Pretty much our main read is going to have to be Lazard on the backside running this curl route. So we're going to see here, pretty much everything else is going to be covered when we jump over to the replay. So now jumping over to the replay, you see we get curl, and then there's a hook defender sitting underneath our curl route on the right side. by Garrett Wilson. There's somebody over the bubble screen, and then it is once again basically man coverage on the outside for Gibson here. This is against Palms, and just to keep it quick, it is the exact same thing. Pretty much your only read is going to be Lazard on this curl route. So you could definitely mix it in if you know your opponent is running a lot of match, but definitely be careful because this isn't one of the best plays against match quarters. And then lastly, against cover zero, it doesn't look like much, but this route from Lazard on that backside is actually money. So you can kind of hit that. Obviously, be careful if your opponent has an acrobat or a knockout, but that is the cover zero read. Of course, you gotta actually accurately freeform it, but you get the idea. You saw me. And then pretty much the only other read is Garrett Wilson here. But you have to be careful because once again we are blocking six. So that backside safety who's manned up on Brees Hall, he can come over and kind of play robber in the middle of the field. But as you can see, you can still fit it in there. And then of course you're gonna have the user lurking around elsewhere. And when you see it's cover zero, you're gonna know it's cover zero. So you can zig, drag, anything of that nature to kind of get that done. So overall, that is the slide concept. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is the last kind of run and shoot specific play in the playbook. Next couple of videos are basically going to be me throwing in what else I like to run that are a little bit more transferable across other playbooks. So overall, it's going to be a fun couple of videos. If you stayed this far into the video, definitely subscribe, like, comment if there's any other questions you may have. And thanks for watching.